Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to get started. I have muted everybody for now. I definitely want your questions and your interactions. So let's start by putting questions in the chat. And as we go through, I'll definitely be able to address those. But I just think for interference purpose, I'm going to leave everyone muted for now. So welcome. Just want to give you a little bit of my backstory on why I'm talking about this today. So as a child, I was not athletic and was always a little overweight. Throughout high school, college, and early adulthood, I would yo-yo in about a 20-pound range. Finally, before my first wedding, which was 30 years ago, I got down to a great body weight for my size, for my body. Then, like everybody else, life got in the way. I had a stressful marriage, stressful job, stressful life, and I skyrocketed. Okay, I'm trying to advance my slides and it's not working. Go. Okay. 23 years ago, at age 35, I woke up, looked in the mirror, and decided I needed to make a change. And I'm thinking you guys can all guess which one in that picture is me because the hair hasn't changed. That night, then I joined a gym, and the next night I met with a trainer to take my measurements. I weighed 60 pounds more than I do now. And honestly, don't want to remember the various measurements they took in inches. 20 months later, I had lost over 55 pounds, was working out 4 to 5 days a week, and making healthy choices about what I ate. Please notice that I said 20 months later, not 3 months later. I've been the same size now for over 20 years and continue to transition my lifestyle to be healthy, fit, happy, and full of self-confidence. I want to reiterate that this was a shift. I became healthy.
She's talking, but I can't hear her.
Okay. Where's your volume? But I can't see.
Okay, volume button.
One of these should be a volume button.
I don't know what's the volume button.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So I want to reiterate that I became healthy, fit, happy, and full of self-confidence. It gave me a huge feeling of control.
Which one, honey?
Okay.
Oh, there.
All right, I'm trying to mute everybody. Could you please mute yourself?
How do I do that? Grady, how do I do that?
Okay, I just muted you, so just don't, oh no, you just, okay, I've muted everybody, so you should be good. So what surprises many people is that my eating habits have continued to transition over the years. I don't eat now the way I did when I lost the weight, but through the years kept updating my dietary choices to eat healthier each year. Nothing makes me feel better about myself than the physical transition I have made in my life. Besides being a size I like, I feel energetic and healthy, and absolutely love the gains in strength and endurance I have achieved over these years. I feel a sense of control that I have been able to accomplish something in my 40s and 50s that seemed completely out of my reach when I was younger. All right, I'm trying to advance my slides there. Here we go. During this time, I became so passionate about the benefits of my lifestyle that I wanted to help others accomplish their goals to achieve a healthy lifestyle as well. That is when I took courses at Cooper Clinic and became a health coach. I then added to my education through Master Wellness volunteer training at Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. Fortunately, the passion I felt through my whole process led me to read and learn everything I could about nutrition and fitness. And I was pretty knowledgeable before the classwork began, but it gave me the additional pieces to solidify my understanding of nutrition and fitness. One thing I've always felt strongly about, and both of these programs reinforced, is that there's great science backing up the information I am sharing with you. As they add studies, it continues to prove the concepts we'll discuss today. And again, in our second session, if you can join us in December, when I'll be talking about other aspects of living healthy. Now I provide the coaching to my friends as requested, because I learned that we are truly on a journey and we have to be ready to move to the next steps. If you told my 35-year-old self that I needed to eat like I do now and stay healthy, I may not have ever started. However, it would have been helpful to know then what I know now about nutrition. So we hear a lot about the many diets being touted today, as well as the nutritional value of different foods. I want to briefly give what the science has to say and leave the rest of the time to answer your questions and hopefully bust any myths that you are hearing out there. First of all, to me, a diet is a meal plan, not specifically a weight loss plan. It should be sustainable over the rest of your life and keep you healthy. Making change is hard, so make the changes that will serve you best for the rest of your life. Year after year, the Mediterranean and DASH diets, so DASH is dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So it's a lower sodium version. Otherwise, the similarities with the Mediterranean are significant. And these are both nutrition plans. They're not diets, but they always come out at the top of the list when the studies are done as the most healthy way to lose weight, maintain weight, and for your overall health. So you may have heard the term food is medicine over the years, and we now know how true that is. Eating a well-rounded nutritious meal plan will greatly reduce your risk of, as well as help improve these conditions: heart disease, diabetes, GI issues, depression, and many cancers. And they are now learning that there is evidence that they will also reduce symptoms of some mental illness and slow down the onset of dementia. For those of you with small children or grandchildren, proper nutrition and reduced processed foods will help children with ADHD and other issues. This flip side to this is that too many processed foods with saturated fat and sugar will increase the risk of and worsen the symptoms of these health issues. And sugar is hidden in so many packaged foods. Always make sure to read your labels. Recently, the government made that easier. They updated the nutrition labels to add a line for added sugar. So you'll see, and I'll show you a sample of it. Total sugars have always been on the nutrition label. There's now a separate line for added sugar. The difference is these are processed sugars and they're not present in real foods. So the sugars that are present in real food could come from milk or fruit or other things that are have naturally occurring sugar. Your body treats them differently. Also, very important to note, when you're looking at a package, the only information that is accurate, definitely accurate, is the nutrition label and ingredient list. Everything else is marketing and is often an exaggeration and misleading. The government guidelines are very lenient. And if there are items in the ingredient list you can't pronounce, put the package down. This is not real food, but full of chemicals and additives. So let me give you an example. We're looking at Sara Lee bread. I just picked one out of many. And you'll see where I've got it circled here, it says white bread made with whole grain. Okay, whole grain, but then it says 8 grams of whole grain. So this sounds pretty great, doesn't it? Except if you look at the very first ingredient, the ingredients are always listed in order of their prevalence. So you have the highest percentage of this first ingredient, and it goes on down. Enriched wheat flour is processed wheat flour. This is not whole wheat flour. So enriched means they stripped all the bran and fiber out of the grain and then added the vitamins back. So you see vitamin, but they had to add all that back because they strip it out to make it look like white flour. So this is not whole grain. They did add a little bit of whole grain wheat flour further down the list, but in a much smaller amount. You will find many breads will start with whole wheat flour. Those are the choices you want to make. So before we get into a quick rundown of a healthy eating plan, let me start by asking you this question. What is a carb? As you can see, both of these foods are technically a carb. So let's stop using the word carb to associate with a food group, because as I go further, you're going to see it applies to many food groups, and they are certainly not all created equal, as this slide shows. Okay, here's the plan. We're going to start with lots and lots of non-starchy vegetables. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to get into starchy vegetables in a separate slide, but this includes all the grains, you know, spinach, kale, lettuce, all the different grains, broccoli, cauliflower, tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, zucchini, yellow squash, you don't see pictured, cabbage, the list goes on and on. But these are not starchy. Carrots are kind of on the cusp, but they're pretty healthy, so don't worry about that. So these are all the non-starchy grains. You should really eat 5 to 7 servings a day. I mean, that sounds like a lot, and it is. But the more vegetables you eat, the less you eat of some of that other stuff that's not so great. So vegetables are a big yes. So when we talk about starchy vegetables, we're talking about potatoes, the winter squashes. You've got butternut, acorn, pumpkin, delicata. These are all the winter squashes. These are considered starchy, and even peas. Now, you're going to see as I go further, some of these have multiple nutrients. Peas is one, it has protein. It's a legume, it has other benefits, but again, you want to be cautious how much starchy vegetable you eat. And often I suggest you use them the same way you will use whole grains, which we'll get into. So at a meal, you always want grains / starchy vegetables, but you may want to be careful how many. Fruit. I just can't tell you how many times I hear people say fruit is bad, it's full of sugar. No, fruit is a big yes. Fruit has nutrients, it does have sugar, and I'm not saying eat it all day long, but when you're eating the whole fruit, and this is why I say fruit, not fruit juice, when you eat the whole fruit, you're getting all the fiber and all these other vitamins and nutrients that they are not finding you get just from the juice, and your body processes it quite differently and slows down the intake of the sugar into your system. So your sugar spikes are not as significant, but more importantly, you're getting so much nutritional value. So eating 2 to 4 servings of fruit a day is not only perfectly acceptable, it's highly recommended. Other healthy grains. Now you're going to see on this slide, I have grains and I have beans. So let's talk about that. In the grain category, the list is so long, it's beautiful. These are the healthy whole grains, like whole wheat bread and crackers, oats, barley, whole wheat pasta or couscous, quinoa, buckwheat, bulgur, brown or wild rice, rye, amaranth, farro, spelt. I'm sure you haven't heard of all those before, but those are all whole grains. And then you also get, again, a lot of starchy carb from the starchy vegetables as well as beans. And they give you great fiber and comparable calories. So again, limit how many you eat at a meal, but definitely include them at every meal. One thing I want to point out here is a lot of people talk about gluten-free. And unless you have been diagnosed as celiac or you truly have a gluten intolerance, which some people do, However, the overwhelming percentage of the population do not have a gluten issue. Gluten is not only not bad for you, most of the items that are touted as gluten-free were either already gluten-free to begin with, or they're processed foods and they're not as good for you. All those starchy vegetables are gluten-free. So if you really do have an issue and you can't eat some of the wheat products, you can eat some of the seeds and beans and the starchy vegetables without a problem. Then we get into lean protein. That encompasses fish, seafood, chicken, as well as the beans, lentils, tofu, low-fat dairy, eggs, yogurt. And you've noticed I've, again, talked about beans as I did in the other categories, so I'm going to show how those all overlap. But I'm not mentioning red meat. And I'm not saying red meat is unacceptable at all levels. I'm saying red meat is not as good for you in any way as these other lean proteins are. It has saturated fat. It has carcinogenic traits, and these are not healthy. So in moderation and small portions, it's fine, but definitely limit it. Also, processed meats like lunch meats, sausage, bacon, hot dogs. These are processed with chemicals and salt, and again, very highly carcinogenic. These are actually very negative for your health. So again, in limited quantities and in moderation, and I'm just saying infrequently as you can manage. Healthy fats. So we talked about the fats in the proteins. You've got the good fats and the not so good fats. You have lots of sources for other healthy fats. You have, besides the fatty fish, you have avocado, nuts, seeds, a lot of oils, olive oil, canola oil, peanut oil, soybean, corn, sunflower, the list goes on. But you're going to notice I'm not saying coconut oil and I'm not saying butter, because these are saturated fats along with a few others. So I know there's been a lot of hype out there that coconut oil is different than other saturated fats. And let me be clear, coconut oil is a saturated fat. And those qualities that they pulled out as a way to redeem it and make it sound good is they can't prove it's nutrient beneficial. And the scientists, the leaders of the NIH and many others are saying coconut oil is a saturated fat and should be treated as such. And you will not see it listed in the Mediterranean diet or the DASH diet. Okay, so to clear up any confusion, you're going to see that many of these foods, we talked about how they overlap categories. So you have your healthy fats, which includes the just fats as well as the proteins. Again, in the proteins, that overlaps there, but then it also overlaps in your unrefined carbs, because your beans, and you're going to find many of your whole grains are pretty high in protein. So always read those labels to understand what you're getting. Your unrefined carbs are all the whole grains and the fruits and the rice, the brown and other wild rices. These do not have protein the same way some of these others do. And then again, your unlimited non-starchy vegetables. Can't talk about those enough. We can't add too many. So one thing I have not touched upon that I know is a question among many is, how about being vegetarian or vegan? And the answer is an emphatic yes. Vegetarian and vegan diets are super good for you, super healthy. There's a lot of beneficial heart outcomes and other outcomes. However, these diets are a lot more difficult, especially vegan, because getting protein intake when you're cutting out all animal products is a little more complicated. It's a little more limited. Definitely doable, but you have to be a planner. You have to be strategic. People who just become vegetarian by cutting out animal proteins are not necessarily being healthy. They're limiting. They're not eating enough vegetables. They're not eating enough legumes. They're not eating enough of the foods that provide the nutritional value. So if you're going to go this route, do it intentionally and do it correctly, and it's awesome for you. Okay, so then I'm just going to now, so that's the basic meal plan. I'm going to touch on a few of these and then I'm going to open it up for questions. You hear a lot about diets. There's diets all over the place. Paleo, keto, Whole30, Atkins, and the list goes on. Personally, and I know many other health coaches and nutritionists agree with me, we're not fans. 2 reasons. One, many of these diets cut out whole food groups. Paleo, keto, they've cut out whole food groups. Nutritionally, you are missing out when you cut out a food group. By cutting out grains, there are nutrients in grains you can't get anywhere else. There are nutrients in, if let's say you decide legumes are bad, or pick whatever your category is, you're cutting out nutrients that you can't make up elsewhere. Do not cut out whole food groups. You want to get them in proper proportion, but I am going to just express that you can succeed without these plans. Now, there are some minor exceptions. There are people with severe diabetes, and under doctor's guidance, the keto plan can help them in a way that they struggle otherwise. That's between you and your doctor and your diabetic nutritionist. I'm not covering those because I'm none of those. For the average person trying to be healthy, the benefits are missing. It's a different process. And I'm going to stop there for now. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because then it'll be easier for me to see everybody. And I want to open it up. And again, you're welcome to either just raise your hand and I'll call on you, or put a question in the chat, whichever way you want to go. If you have diets that you've utilized or questioned or anything I talked about, you have questions on, broad opening. I hear all kinds of interesting thoughts and feedback. I'm unmuting everybody, so just raise your hand. Oh, I didn't unmute everybody. I tried. Let me try that again. Oh, I did. You now need to unmute yourself if you want to speak. Okay, Laura Halper, I saw yours go first.
Okay. Excuse me, we have 2 computers okay, thank you. So I've got 2 questions, I guess, right now. One is, I have heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I know, of course, typical sodas like Cokes and Pepsis, that kind of thing, are loaded with sugar. And obviously, if you're trying to lose weight or avoid sugar for other reasons, whatever, you don't drink those. But I've also heard that diet sodas either stimulate a craving for sugar or somehow affect your body chemistry, so you end up gaining weight when you're drinking diet sodas as well, or it's bad for diabetes even though it doesn't have sugar. Can you speak at all to diet sodas?
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion and research. The science not completely solidified. You are drinking chemicals, so anytime you're ingesting chemicals, you're going to have reaction. Many people are able to drink them without a problem. And this is where I always say one size does not fit all, and we all have to learn our bodies. Ideally, I would say cut out as much diet soda as you're able. I used to drink, trust me, when I lost all the weight, I drank plenty of diet soda. Over the years, I cut back. And this is one thing that I'll probably get into more next time. But as you're moving away from some of these foods that aren't the best for you, it's not an all or nothing thing. Going cold turkey on a lot of this stuff is pretty darn hard to do. This is making baby step changes. So if you're drinking 6 glasses of diet soda a day now,
Wow.
Go back to 4, see how you're doing. If you're drinking, you know what I mean? And same with even Coke. If you're drinking a lot of Coke, whatever you're drinking, cut it back by a third or a half. Start there, because if you deprive yourself too much, you're going to struggle. And I'm a big believer in splurges, so allow them, but plan them. So again, the science is not solid, but cutting back is better than not.
Okay, and I do have a second question if I can, may
Go ahead.
ask. No, okay. So also, there's a saying or something that fish is brain food. I've never understood what that's supposed to mean. Now, is that just something that the people who sell fish have, a marketing thing, or
Well,
other
yeah,
than being a good source of protein and healthy unsaturated fat?
yeah, I'm sure they're doing that from the omega-3 fats, which you find in many fishes. It's good for you to eat it, but there's a lot of things they say are brain food, but we don't eat any of them in big enough quantity, each one to count. It's the cumulative diet. Yes, food is brain food in general. Eating the right proportion of the right things affects your brain significantly, but we can't pinpoint it to one versus the other by itself. Anna, I saw you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I did. So, I understand what you were advocating. And I know that you plan your meals, right? Can you talk about meal planning? Because I think that's where it's very easy to fall down.
It is. I've created habits for myself that people think I'm just overly disciplined. It's all habits. We can all learn new habits. It takes time, it takes practice. But when I plan my meals, I always have a starch, healthy grain or carb. I always have a fruit or vegetable. Usually I do fruit at breakfast and vegetables at lunch and dinner. I always have a lean protein. I always have a healthy fat. The reason is by combining these, first of all, you have a better chance of getting your nutrients in for the day. Also, it affects the way your blood sugar responds to the foods you eat. If you eat all grain without any healthy fats or protein, your blood sugar is going to spike and drop. And you're going to feel that decline earlier. I personally happen to physically get the shakes when that happens. So I was forced to behave. But if I don't combine those, I do notice a blood sugar difference because I'm sensitive, but it happens in all of us. So again, it's a combination of those things. I eat a lot of fish. I try to get in as many vegetarian meals a week as I can. I'm not as good at it as others. I've just learned not to buy the things and keep in my house that I shouldn't be eating, and those are for special occasions or weekend splurges. So that was in a quick nutshell. I'm happy to dig in deeper as we go through other questions if we have time. Was that helpful? Okay. Any other hands am I missing? Laura.
Does your husband eat the same meals that you plan for yourself? Because that's an issue in some households.
Yes, he does. I have been very fortunate in that regard. He will eat all the healthy food I make. He fortunately was a healthy eater when I met him and limits his red meat intake anyway. So he saves it for restaurants because I don't know how to cook it. Because I don't eat any of it. That's not true. I eat lamb like once every 2 or 3 months because I enjoy it. I don't miss any of the other stuff at this point. I grew up eating meat. I mean, I didn't weigh 60 pounds more than I do now by not eating meat and saturated fat and processed carbs and sugar. I ate it all. I ate it all just like everybody else did. And that's why I said, I lost the weight cutting back, but the way I eat today was a process. And it's really incorporating some of these foods. Just by incorporating more vegetables into your day, you will limit some of the other things you eat because you only have so much food on your plate. And little by little, you just start making those changes. They don't feel as cumbersome as if you try to do it all at once. But yes, he's very cooperative.
Can you discuss sugar?
Yes, I'd be happy to discuss sugar. We are, in this country, sugaraholics. We intake way more than nutritional guidelines say is healthy. Just to give you a, for instance, using that soda analogy, 1 can of soda has as much sugar as a man should take in a whole day. So that means nothing else with sugar in it, 1 can of soda meets their maximum. A half a can to 2/3 of a can meets a woman's maximum on what's considered healthy. Now, if you go into the grocery store and you start or go in your pantry, start reading all the labels in your pantry, you're going to be amazed. Look at tomato soup, marinara sauce, the list. I stopped buying it, so the list goes on. I can't just off the top of my head. And all the added sugar and all the foods you eat, and we're not even talking dessert yet. We haven't gotten to dessert yet. So my goal again, over time, was to start reading those labels and reduce as much of that as I could, because you don't miss the taste if you find the right products. And I save my sugar for dessert. I love dessert, so I do that. But sugar wreaks havoc on our bodies. It is very detrimental. And so as I talked about the healthy meal plans, create an opportunity for you to have, to control diabetes or prevent it. It affects your heart and heart disease. It affects your cholesterol, all of these things. And sugar is a component in that, as are processed carbs and saturated fat. We as Americans abuse all of them significantly, but I think sugar is probably the highest on the list. So when you walk by somebody's desk and grab a piece of candy in the middle of the day, on top of that, all the other processed foods you've eaten for the day, you're intaking a lot of sugar, and it is doing harm. And I will tell you, people that I know who've lost weight, fortunately, I was healthy enough when I started this that I went from normal blood pressure to low blood pressure, but I wasn't not well. People who are in those states of considered illness are able to pull those numbers back significantly by doing this. Many get off many medications, blood pressure medications, pre-diabetes or diabetes medications. Sugar and processed carbs are pretty significant in affecting your blood sugar.
So
Yes, Michael.
along the same lines, what are your thoughts on sodium, and is there too much of it in the world,
Oh,
and
gosh,
so
yes.
forth?
Oh gosh, yes, thank you. I did not touch on sodium
Segue.
significantly. The max we're supposed to get in a day is 2,300 milligrams. You start looking at fast food. So the fast food restaurants all post all their nutrition labels now. That became a law years ago. Go read a few. You will be shocked. Go read your can of soup. Go read a variety of other foods. You're getting 2,300 milligrams before you make it halfway through lunch. Yes, sodium's a major problem, and there's a lot of lobbying going on with food companies to ask them to reduce the sodium in their packaged foods, because most people aren't paying attention. All they know is they're not using a salt shaker. So they're assuming I'm fine, I'm not adding salt to my food. Restaurants and food manufacturers add tons and tons of sodium to your diet, and your blood pressure is paying dearly for it. Fern, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So can you see this?
Yes.
What do you think about these drinks? It's the sparkling ice, and it has 0 sugar with vitamins and antioxidants.
So I'm glad you asked. So in general, there's a ton of club sodas with flavoring now. Ones that are just club soda with natural flavors are absolutely great. They're fine. Some of the ones you're talking about with the added vitamins, I would just caution you, if you're taking multivitamins and other vitamins as well, and then you're adding that, certain vitamins in large quantities are toxic, and they're not good for your body. So if you can find one of those sodas that does not have all the added vitamins, you're better off, because a lot of foods are fortified. Again, if you're taking a multivitamin, you can overdo it. Vitamin A in high doses is dangerous. Someone I know very well ended up in the hospital with heart palpitations. Turned out she was eating these protein bars. We'll get into that. that had a lot of selenium in them. And it was causing heart palpitations. She had to get off all of it. And it was all these added vitamins that are supposed to make these things so good for you. And it was too much and it was toxic for her body. So be cautious. And let me just touch on protein bars and all those meal replacement bars. Let me just use the term processed food. Be careful. Some are much better than others. Read the ingredients. If they sound like real foods, like nuts and seeds and fruits, go for it. If they have all kinds of other stuff in them, most of them have chocolate and other weird things in there. Be very cautious.
Can we get back to sodium? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, so we don't eat processed foods very much. How do you know how much 2,300 milligram, what did you,
Yeah, that's the number.
how do you know what you're eating?
So if you're not eating a lot of packaged foods, you're probably in decent shape. Now, the more you eat out, the more you're getting. And you can't know.
Right.
The key then is to limit, how much you're eating out. And I also know people who go into restaurants and say, I'm on a low sodium diet. Please ask them to make my food with less sodium. Most restaurants, now I'm not talking about the fast food chains, it's all pre-made. But if you go to a regular restaurant, they will usually try to accommodate you. But if you're eating out 5-6 nights a week, you're getting a lot of sodium.
We don't eat out 5-6 nights,
Yeah.
maybe one night a week if a
And-
lot,
And
okay?
you're probably
And I
doing just
cook
fine.
every meal.
Yeah.
And I have high blood pressure and I've been told to restrict my salt. How do I know what I'm doing? How do I measure 2,300?
Well,
I don't know
if-
how to do that.
so the best way to do that, if you're using anything in a can or a package, it'll be on there.
Okay,
If you're using fresh grains and vegetables and proteins, there's none in there. Then when you go to season your food, limit how much salt you add. Very interesting. You could put a half a teaspoon of salt in your cooking while you're cooking.
right.
You're gonna have a very limited salty taste at the table. You put half of that on your food after it's cooked, and you're gonna taste it much more significantly. So Cliff and I have very different sodium needs. I have low blood pressure. He has high blood pressure. I don't
Right.
cook with salt at all. And I
Oh.
salt my food at the table. Because
Well,
I like
I
the taste
grew
and I
up-
need it.
I grew up in a Hungarian household where salt and paprika were the only two things that we used. And I'm used to salting. And everybody, I've been trying to cut back my chicken soups. Not everybody's adding salt to it because
That's
it's
okay.
not,
Let
I
them
guess
add
that's
salt.
okay, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let them add salt. Again, they're going to add less than you might have put in there to begin with to make it taste what they want.
Okay. I just don't know how to measure that and it's been driving me crazy for
Now
years.
you can Google measurements of salt and get the milligrams and get a feel. But if you're making a big pot of soup, that's hard to translate.
That's right, how
Right.
it dissipates.
Right.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I feel like I saw somebody else. Anna.
Another question, and you touched on it. What about eating socially? I find that's my real downfall. I can be fine when it's just us at home. But now that COVID's loosened up a bit, we're eating out a little bit more and eating with other people more, and that is really difficult. Do you have any tips on how to deal with that?
I do, and I think there's two different circumstances, right? There's eating in someone's home, when there's appetizers sitting on the table, and you're hanging out and schmoozing and having that glass of wine with the nosh available. And if you're lucky, there's some healthy options there. So that's scenario A. Scenario B is a restaurant. So let's start with scenario A. If you're going to someone's home who's going to offer healthy options, perfect. If not, offer to bring the appetizers. I'm so serious. I promise you, every time I go to someone's house, I'm bringing the salad because they all know to ask me to do that. I'm bringing the veggie appetizers. I'm bringing the roasted vegetable side because they know I'm so happy to be bringing large quantities. pick and choose and then move away from the food. And it's really as simple as don't make it within arm's reach. I'm not saying don't go back for seconds. I'm saying don't make it where it's right here and moving this hand back and forth is mindless, because we'll all do it, myself included. If you're even in the oneg room, walk away from the buffet, get away from the easy grab. And put it on your plate, measure it out, eat that, and be done. And again, it's a mindset. Here's my portion, like all portion control. Here's my portion. I finish it, I'm done. Then you go to the restaurant or the main table, and there's bread on the table. I love bread. I don't eat it very often for a very good reason, because if it's on the table, I'm going to eat more of it. So I just eat it every now and then. But if I'm in a restaurant, I want a piece of that really good bread. When I then order my entree, if it comes with a grain, I ask them to leave it off and give me extra vegetables. And they always are happy to accommodate me. And in that case, I don't need that. I don't need the bread and the potatoes. I'm picking one, bread one on that one. Another day may not, but that day bread one. And it's really thinking through again, the whole process of what's coming and planning for it. Knowing that if we order appetizers for the table, again, I want to make sure I pick the vegetable one, make sure it's on the table so I can nosh on that and taste the others and not eat too much of them. So it's, again, thinking through wholly what you want to eat, what you're comfortable eating, and portioning it out and not taking seconds, unless there's good vegetables on the table. Seconds are fine on those. Sandy?
Me again, I'm sorry.
Not at all, please.
I put my camera down before because I am drinking a glass of wine.
That's okay.
I want to know your thoughts on drinking wine.
Okay. So for years we heard a glass of wine, every night's great. It's good for your heart. And no, it's not.
It's not?
It's not. So basically what they're saying, if you don't drink already, don't start drinking for that. And it's not that it's, the reason they came up with that is there's a chemical in grapes that are in wine, obviously, that are good for you. But the quantities you need to take in are so high, you're not getting enough from the wine for it to count. One glass of wine a day is not bad. It's not ideal. Alcohol has negative effects on the body. I personally stopped drinking alcohol more often because as I aged, the weight, it was a bigger struggle to keep the weight where I wanted it. And I just realized that if I only drink on Fridays and Saturdays, then if I don't drink during the week, I can manage my weight fine, or if I drink every night, that becomes a different equation. So it was like, oh, do I cut out one more starch or do I drink the glass of wine? It was really that helped me decide. Pure health wise, less is better. So without saying don't drink, which I do drink, so I'm not saying that, less is better. But certainly for women, no more than one glass a day. I mean, I do drink 2 on the weekend because I figured I didn't have any all week, but 1 a day is considered the maximum that's healthy. Men can get away with 2. They just process alcohol differently than we do.
But I like it.
I like it too. That's why I drink it on the weekends.
And that's a balance. I think Sandy brought up something really good. Is that it's a balance. And many of us are not 25 anymore,
Right.
or even 50 anymore. And it's this balance of enjoying your life and yet trying to be as healthy as you can be. And I think that's the struggle.
Yes.
We all want to be healthy. We don't want to have to take a lot of medication, etc. But
we want to enjoy it.
you want to enjoy.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes it so hard.
And that's why I build splurges into my plan each week. Because if you don't, you're going to feel deprived. You are never going to succeed at this if you feel deprived. So I love sweets. Now, I don't crave sweets the way I used to because I don't eat as many, and eventually you're sugar cravings diminish. But I love them anyway. So I have a piece of dark chocolate every night because that's just enough dark chocolate. You don't need as much to get that, whatever it is, that satisfaction. Friday and Saturday, I have dessert. I love, whether it's ice cream or whatever it is, I have dessert because then the rest of the week I don't feel deprived on that piece of chocolate. When I'm with friends and I eat an extra appetizer, that's okay. Because Sunday I'm going to get back on my plan and do what I have to do. Now, part of that also means that breakfast and lunch on the weekends, I'm as careful as I am the rest of the week. So when I go out Friday night and Saturday, and this is just the times that work for me, you pick what works for you. If brunch on Sunday is your thing, make it brunch on Sunday. I mean, do what fits your lifestyle. But for me, I'm perfectly happy to have my normal breakfast and lunch so I can go splurge at night and enjoy every bite and not think twice about it. Does that help? It helps. I know it's, again, baby steps. If you just pull it back a little bit, I'm not telling you to live the way I live. I'm telling you to take where you are now and take some of these things into account and figure out what's the one thing you can adopt and work on it for a while. You know, that could be a week, that could be 6 months before you're ready to take on the second thing. And just start prioritizing for yourself what you feel you're most comfortable with first, or what you think is most important first. For Sandy, that may be the sodium. For someone else, that may be adding a couple more vegetables every day. Whatever that one thing is, start there and build on it. And don't hesitate. I'm open to anybody who's listening to this. When you get stuck and when you run into a brick wall and when you fall off the wagon, and when you don't know what the next step is, drop me an email. I am happy to talk to anybody and walk you through this at any time, because the bumps and the falling off the bandwagon, I've done it a million times over the years, where, you know, I went away for a family weekend and I came back and went, oh God, what did I just do? You know, it takes time. Laura?
So I was interested when you said a few minutes ago that your the way that you eat or you like to eat on the weekend is like, you know, you'll be careful for breakfast and lunch so that, you know, if you're going out, you have a big meal at dinner and, you know, overall it all balances out. Now, I have heard and keep hearing more and more that it's better to eat your big meal early in the day and then eat really, really light at night. I don't know if that works or not, but I'm just saying, it seems to be that's the current thinking
Right.
more. And they say, you know, have breakfast like a king and lunch like a prince and dinner like a pauper, or whatever they say.
Yes.
What's your take on all of this? Does it
So-
really matter if throughout the day you're, you know?
So it's very interesting that science has become more developed on this over time. Yeah, I mean, ideally, yes, but then, you know, it goes back to Anna's point of we want to enjoy life too. For me, yes, I agree with that, but I can't say I live it. My dinner is probably my biggest meal of the day. My dinner is still very healthy and light most days of the week, but it's bigger than my breakfast and lunch. That's when Cliff and I usually get to sit down and have a meal together, you know, so basically I'm a walking proof that you don't have to go by that. That said, there is a lot of science now around this whole intermittent fasting thing, and there's a lot of variations. Personally, for me, it would never work, but for other people, it works great. So some of the variations are eating all of your food in an 8-hour window, so 10 to 6, 9 to 5, whatever it is, all your calories, and then do not eat from that cutoff at the end of the day till the next morning. Your body definitely responds well to this. There other ones are eating like 500 calories a day, 2 days, and then the next day having a big day, and intermittent fasting that way. I would be so hangry for those 2 days. These are just not options for me, but the science proves that it works. So again, there's a lot of possibilities, but you have to work in the realm of what are you going to stick with? What's going to work for you in your life, and be realistic. Again, it goes back to what Sandy asked about the wine. My doctor and I had this conversation one day about weight management. I'm a love-hate thing with my doctors because I go in to get my tests every year and do what I have to do. And they're like, see you next year. Nice talking to you, bye. But then we get in these conversations about nutrition and fitness because they're like, are you still? Check. Yeah, check. So I said to my doctor, like, my friends are complaining. They want to drink every night and then they want to know why they're gaining weight. She goes, so are my patients. Maybe you should talk to them. Like, our bodies change and we have to be willing to be open-minded. Trust me, what I could get away with at 40 versus I'm about to turn 59, very different eating habits, but I made those and I know it's going to keep changing. Those gradual changes over time to keep up with it. The flip side to that, and we'll talk about this more in December, is I have not let my exercise back off because that's part of the balancing act. But again, so yes, fasting is great. It's not for everybody. You can tell I'm a complete nerd on how much I read on this stuff. I love it. The more science, the better. Anybody else? Oh, we used up almost our whole hour. Okay, well then I am going to promote, we have in December, we're going to take this a step further and we're going to talk about the other things that impact your health, because nutrition is crucial, but it doesn't do it all by itself. We're going to talk about physical activity, stress, sleep, and how to take some of these other healthy habits and continue to incorporate them into our lives. And since we had a lot of that conversation tonight, let me know how you're doing in December and what other questions you have arisen from your baby steps. So bring them back to me, we'll talk about them.
All I can tell you is this is the biggest stress reliever in my life.
That's a good one. That's a good walking that dog also will be even a bigger stress reliever because walking is great. So.
I want to thank you, Sid, because I've never heard a more reasonable approach to this whole eating part of your life than what you have presented tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, because to me, that's the most important part, is taking out the equation of all this weird stuff that's out there. There's a lot of bad information.
Yes.
And I really, if I can help clear that, thank you. I'm happy I was able to do that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, I'm going to stop recording.